After the war, Germans said the same sentence again and again. We had no idea. No idea about the smoke. No idea about the screams. No idea about the camp 6 miles away. General George S. Patton didn't argue with them. He did something far worse. He made them walk. And what they saw destroyed the lie forever. April 11th, 1945. The war in Europe is collapsing in on itself. Germany is dying loudly, chaotically, and without dignity. American armor rolls east through towns that no longer resist. White flags hang from windows. Wehrmacht units dissolve overnight. And everywhere, Germans say the same thing. We had no idea. They say it to soldiers. They say it to officers. They say it with their hands raised and their eyes wide, as if innocence might be performed convincingly enough to become real. We had no idea what was happening. We didn't know about the camps. We didn't know about the killings. We didn't know. General George S. Patton hears it constantly. He hears it in villages where slave laborers once marched every morning. He hears it in towns that smelled of burning flesh for years. He hears it from mayors who signed requisition orders and businessmen who supplied wire, coal, concrete, and food to places that were not factories, not hospitals, not prisons in any ordinary sense. Patton does not believe them. By the spring of 1945, Patton has seen enough of Germany to understand something essential about denial. It is not ignorance. It is a posture, a habit, a survival strategy refined over 12 years of terror. People learned what not to see, what not to hear, what questions not to ask. And now that the Reich is finished, they pretend that blindness was imposed on them rather than chosen. On April 11th, American forces liberate Buchenwald concentration camp near the city of Weimar. The SS flee hours before the Americans arrive, leaving behind tens of thousands of prisoners and tens of thousands of dead. Some bodies lie unburied in courtyards. Some are stacked near the crematorium. Others are discovered in railway cars, locked from the outside, filled with men who suffocated days before liberation. Patton does not enter Buchenwald immediately. He's nearby, commanding Third Army operations when the reports come in. Hardened officers struggle to describe what they have seen. Some simply say, "You need to come." Others say nothing at all. 2 days later, Patton arrives at Ohrdruf, a subcamp of Buchenwald. This is where his certainty hardens into something else. He stops at a doorway. Inside the shed are bodies, stacked, tangled, unfinished. Men who were shot because the ovens could not keep up. Men who were starved until their bodies collapsed into themselves. Men reduced to objects, arranged with the same indifference as lumber. Patton does not step inside. This is not a man unfamiliar with death. Patton has seen fields after artillery barrages where bodies lay in pieces. He has walked among the dead of Sicily, North Africa, France. He has smelled decay in summer heat and blood frozen into winter soil. None of it stopped him before. This stops him. He later admits, privately, that if he entered that shed, he would vomit, and he refuses to be seen vomiting, not because he lacks humanity, but because he understands symbolism. A commander retting in front of his men suggests loss of control, and Patton is holding himself together by will alone. He walks away from the doorway, not to escape it, but to make himself see everything else. The gallows, the whipping posts, the burn pits, the evidence that this was not chaos or revenge, but routine, a system, a schedule, a bureaucracy of death. That night, Patton writes in his diary. He does not write emotionally. He writes deliberately. He orders journalists to come immediately. He orders photographers to document everything. And then he writes something else, something that reveals he is already thinking beyond the war, beyond victory, beyond Germany's surrender. To give first-hand evidence of these things, if ever in the future develops a tendency to charge these allegations merely to propaganda. Patton understands something crucial in that moment. Someday, people will deny this. Someday they will say it was exaggerated, that it was invented, that the Allies lied. And he understands something else just as clearly. Photographs will not be enough. Reports will not be enough. Testimony will not be enough. The Germans themselves must see it. Not the soldiers, not the SS, not the prisoners. The civilians. The ones who say, "We had no idea." And there is one place where that lie is most carefully preserved. One city where culture, refinement, and denial live comfortably side by side. 6 miles from Buchenwald. Weimar. Weimar is not just another German town. It is not rubble-strewn like Cologne, not industrial like Essen, not militarized like Berlin. Weimar is something far more dangerous in Patton's eyes. It is respectable, cultured, educated. A city that believes itself morally elevated above the barbarism of the regime it served. If Germany had a soul, Weimar claimed to be its keeper. This is where Goethe wrote Faust, where Schiller spoke of freedom and human dignity, where Bach worked and Nietzsche thought himself into madness. When Germany tried to invent democracy after the First World War, it did not gather in Berlin. It gathered here. The Weimar Republic took its name from this city because Weimar symbolized enlightenment, restraint, and intellectual seriousness. And 6 miles away, human beings were being burned alive. Buchenwald was built on Ethersberg Hill, a place already soaked in cultural memory. Goethe had walked those woods. He had written about that landscape. The Nazis chose it deliberately. They always did. They liked their cruelty wrapped in symbolism. From Weimar, the camp was impossible to miss. On clear days, smoke rose above the tree line, gray, oily, persistent. It did not behave like domestic smoke. It did not drift lazily and disappear. It clung, it hung, it marked the sky. The smell traveled even farther. Burning flesh does not respect municipal boundaries. It moves with the wind. It settles into curtains, clothing, lungs. The people of Weimar smelled it for years. They learned to shut windows, to breathe shallowly, to avoid conversations that required explanations they did not want to give. And then there were the prisoners. Buchenwald was a labor camp. Its inmates were marched daily through nearby villages to factories, quarries, and construction sites. Columns of skeletal men in striped uniforms passed through streets under armed guard. Farmers saw them, shopkeepers saw them, schoolchildren saw them. A local mayor once complained in writing, not about cruelty, not about murder, but about aesthetics. He wrote that the sight of emaciated prisoners marching through town was not exactly pleasant for the population. He asked that the routes be changed. That letter still exists. It proves something vital, not that Germans knew everything, but that they knew enough. Enough to complain, enough to be disturbed, enough to look away intentionally. Patton understands this kind of knowing. He has encountered it before. In North Africa, in Sicily, in liberated towns where civilians insist they were victims of circumstance while their neighbors lie in shallow graves. Denial, Patton knows, is not ignorance, it is construction. People build it carefully, brick by brick, excuse by excuse. They tell themselves stories that allow them to live with what surrounds them. And once built, denial cannot be dismantled with argument. So Patton chooses spectacle. On April 16, 1945, he issues an order. 1,000 citizens of Weimar will assemble at dawn. They will walk 6 miles to Buchenwald. They will see the camp. All of it. They are not asked, they are told. The list is not random. Shopkeepers, teachers, doctors, housewives, but also officials, administrators, the people who signed forms, managed budgets, maintained normalcy. 2 names matter most: Alfred Freiberg, the mayor of Weimar, and Kurt Lissow, the city treasurer, the banker. The morning arrives gently. Spring sunlight, budding trees, the kind of day that invites strolls and conversation, and the citizens of Weimar address accordingly. Women arrive in fur coats, mink, fox, the garments of culture and status. Men wear polished shoes and felt hats. Some bring walking sticks. Some check their watches, irritated by the early hour. They believe this is humiliation, not revelation, a forced march meant to embarrass them, perhaps accompanied by a lecture, an inconvenience to be endured. Some of them smile. That detail survives in photographs and eyewitness accounts. Smiling Germans, laughing quietly as they pass through the gatehouse, as if attending a civic outing, as if this were a picnic they did not choose. American military police flank the column, rifles slung, expressions hard. Jeeps idle at the front and rear. This is not symbolic. Anyone who tries to leave will be stopped. Anyone who refuses to walk will be made to. The column moves through Weimar's streets, past Goethe's house, past theaters and cafes, past the architecture of German pride. And then the city thins and the countryside opens. Rolling fields, trees, the same landscape that inspired poetry. Then the wind shifts. It carries something with it. Edward Murrow, standing in Buchenwald the day before, had struggled for words. He said, "There surged around me an evil-smelling stink." For a man of language, that was all he could manage. Now the citizens of Weimar smell it too. The smiles vanish. Hands rise to cover mouths, eyes begin to water, not from grief, but from biology. The body recognizes death instantly. It does not require explanation. With every step, the smell intensifies. This is no longer distant, no longer ignorable. It presses into lungs, coats, skin. It will stay there. Some slow down instinctively. The body resists walking toward that smell. Every nerve says turn back, but the rifles are behind them. The road is ahead. Above the gates of Buchenwald, iron letters curve elegantly. Jedem das Seine. To each what he deserves. The citizens of Weimar pass beneath it. Inside the gates, survivors stand silently by the wire, skeletal, hollow-eyed. They do not shout, they do not accuse, they simply watch. The respectable citizens cannot meet their gaze. Patton is not present for the walk. He does not need to be. His design is already in motion. What comes next will dismantle denial completely. Inside Buchenwald, the ground itself seems exhausted. Ash has worked its way into everything. It dulls color. It softens edges. It coats boots and hems and settles into the folds of those fur coats that once signaled refinement. The citizens step through the gates and immediately understand something they had not prepared for. This place is not abandoned. It is watching them. The prisoners stand near the barracks and along the wire, motionless not because they are instructed to be, but because movement costs energy they do not have. Their bodies are reduced to function alone, breathing, standing, watching. They do not speak, and that silence is worse than shouting. An American officer gestures forward. The column begins to move, not freely, not curiously, but under guidance. This is not a tour in the casual sense. It is deliberate, sequential, designed. The first stop is the barracks. Long wooden structures stretch across the camp, built for efficiency, not comfort. They were designed to house hundreds. They held thousands. Inside, the air is thick and damp, carrying the smell of sickness, sweat, and something sour that clings to the back of the throat. The citizens file in. On the bunks lie men who are still alive, barely. Skin pulled tight over bone, eyes too large for their faces, limbs like sticks wrapped in fabric. Some sit upright, propped against walls. Others lie flat, too weak to lift their heads. These are not bodies. These are people. The realization lands unevenly. Some citizens freeze. Some turn away instinctively. And when they do, an American hand reaches out and turns their heads back. Look. That is the rule here. You looked away before. You will not now. The prisoners stare back, not with hatred, not with triumph. There is no energy left for either. What remains is recognition.
These are the people who crossed the street when they passed, the shopkeepers who refused service, the clerks who stamped papers, the neighbors who closed their windows. The living evidence of what normalcy required. The citizens move on in silence. The second stop is the crematorium. It sits apart from the barracks, brick and functional, designed like a factory because it was one. A chimney rises above it, stained dark by years of use. Even now, days after liberation, warmth lingers in the bricks. The building remembers what it was built to do. Inside, the ovens line the wall. 6 of them. Iron doors, ashtrays beneath, the mechanisms of reduction. The smell here is different, sharper, mineral, the scent of charred bone, calcium, the remains of people reduced to components. Ash coats the floor. The citizens are breathing it. Someone notices the inside of the oven doors. Scratches, deep grooves cut into iron, fingernail marks, desperate, repeated. Not everyone who entered these ovens was dead. Some woke up. A woman retches. She vomits onto the ash-covered floor. No one moves to help her. There is nowhere clean to stand. No one looks away. The column moves again. The third stop is outside Block 2. They are not taken inside. They are made to wait. A table stands in the open air. On it are objects, evidence. 2 shrunken human heads sit side by side, preserved until they resemble grotesque artifacts. The skin is leathery, the features still recognizable. These were Polish prisoners who tried to escape. They were executed, then kept. Next to them are pieces of tattooed skin, carefully cut, preserved, designs still visible. Ships, eagles, romantic symbols. A lampshade. For years, some would claim it was propaganda, an exaggeration, but the material was tested. It was human skin. It belonged to someone. The name Ilse Koch hangs unspoken in the air, the wife of the camp commandant, cultured, fashionable, a collector. The women of Weimar stand before that table in their fur coats and gloves, staring at the work of someone who attended dinners, who hosted parties, who lived comfortably within the same social world they did. A mirror they did not want. Some faint. Some laugh, a thin, broken sound that echoes wrong. The brain short-circuits when reality overwhelms it. It reaches for anything. Others stand perfectly still, faces blank. These are the ones who suspected, who told themselves it couldn't be this. Margaret Borkwhite-White stands nearby, camera raised. She will later say the lens gave her distance, a barrier. The citizens have no barrier. They are saturated. By the time the march ends, denial has nowhere left to stand. They reform into a column and begin the walk back to Weimar. No one speaks. The sun lowers. Shadows stretch. The city reappears ahead, unchanged and irreparably altered. That night, lights burn late in Weimar City Hall, and behind closed doors, decisions are made.
The citizens of Weimar return home carrying something heavier than memory. The smell follows them. It clings to coats and hair, settles into upholstery, seeps into walls. No amount of washing will remove it completely. For some, it will return years later, triggered by smoke or damp earth, dragging them back to that road, that gate, that table. Dinner is attempted, plates sit untouched, conversations fail before they begin. Sleep does not come easily, if at all. But in the city hall, sleep is not attempted. Alfred Freiberg sits at his desk, the mayor of Weimar, the highest civilian authority in a city that styled itself the conscience of Germany. For years he signed papers, attended functions, preserved the rhythm of normal life while smoke rose from Ettersberg Hill. He had walked to Buchenwald in his formal coat that morning. Now he stares at the ceiling above him, the same ceiling he has stared at for years. Authority carved into wood, stability, order. It no longer holds.
In another room, Kurt Liso sits with his family, the city treasurer, the banker, the man who balanced the books. Every payment, every expenditure, every requisition flowed through his office. Coal was purchased, materials were paid for. Buchenwald ran on budgets as much as brutality. Neither man pulled a trigger. Neither man lit an oven. By legal definitions, they were civilians. But law is not the only measure. Sometime in the night, Freiberg and his wife take blades and open their wrists. They're found the next morning, seated, composed, blood dried, eyes fixed upward. In Liso's home, poison is mixed, enough for 3. He gives it to his wife, then to his daughter. We do not know her age, we do not know her name, only that she trusted her father. The photograph taken the next morning becomes one of the war's quiet indictments. A family seated upright, dressed well, looking almost peaceful. Except no one sleeps like that. The mayor and the banker did not die of guilt alone. They died of exposure. Patton's strategy spreads. Across Germany, civilians are forced to see, to dig graves, to watch films, to walk through camps. The goal is not revenge, it is record, the destruction of plausible deniability. Years later, people will still deny the Holocaust, but they will deny it against photographs, testimony, bodies, and the memory of those who were made to look. Patton understood something standing outside that shed at Ohrdruf. Truth must sometimes be imposed. Buchenwald stands now as a memorial. The gates remain. The inscription remains. To each what he deserves. And the world keeps looking.